Konnichiwa. It's a pleasure to be here again this year and to see the growth that's happening in the whole area of coach development and the work in developing the workforce of coach developers. And I'd particularly like to thank Dr. Tanigama, Dr. Ito, and NSSU, as well as the Japan Sport Agency and Sport for Tomorrow for the support that is provided for this very important global program. The impact of the program around the world is being felt, and it is really exciting to be part of it. I'd like to focus my presentation looking to the future and looking to the kinds of trends that there are in coaching education. So really to think about what are the trends in coach education and how are we preparing for those trends. It's important to think about and anticipate what is going to happen in the future, and so I'm challenging you to consider that in your own programs and whether or not you are prepared for some of the changes that are happening. I've looked at some work done by the European SchoolNet, which is an association, an organization of 30 different ministries of education in Europe. And the teachers within those 30 countries were asked this question: which educational trends do you think will have the greatest impact on our teaching and learning in the future? So I think these are just their opinions and what they are experiencing, but I think it will help stimulate our thinking in terms of what's happening in our own contexts. So I'd like to take just a couple of minutes before we get into the presentation to ask you to share your thoughts just with a partner, somebody sitting beside you. What are the trends that you see in either in education in general or in your coaching program specifically, where a trend is a general direction in which something is developing or changing? So what are the things that you are seeing within your programs or education in general that are moving in the future, that are a general direction in the future? So I'm just going to give you 2 minutes, talk to the person beside you or in front or behind you, and just express what you see some of the trends are in education or in your own programs. Please go ahead. All right, if we could come back again together, please. Ladies and gentlemen, if we could come back together again, please. I think we could spend a long time talking about that and learning from each other's experiences. But what I really wanted to do was to get you engaged in thinking about your own context, your own experience, and then relate it to what I'm going to describe the opinions of these teachers. Not that what these teachers say are right or wrong. It really depends very much on the context, but I think it stimulates our thinking and will get us really thinking about what do we need to be anticipating in the future. So, according to these teachers in Europe, trend number 1, project-based learning. So what they're seeing that's happening in education in Europe is that students are working on challenges and problems to investigate in groups and organizing and directing themselves as far as possible. That's a trend that they're seeing moving forward in the future. Now I think the implication to coach developers, to those that are working with coaches to facilitate their learning, is the importance of facilitation skills and the design of group learning activities. We're seeing some, I think, very interesting examples of this kind of work that's happening. And this is actually an example from Finland that John Alder shared with us. But Finland has changed their education system such that in senior high school, Finland will become the first country in the world to get rid of all school subjects. There will no longer be classes in physics or math or languages or whatever, but rather the students will study concepts, phenomena, and events in an interdisciplinary format, applying materials from those basic subjects to those, but again, very much in a project-based learning kind of format. Another example, also from Finland, is at Haaga-Helia University, where they have a degree in sport coaching where they have used a very similar project-based learning format, where the students are asked to solve problems, to deal with certain issues that coaches face, again in a very interdisciplinary process. And in talking to the professors that teach in that setting, they really enjoy it. They find it very stimulating, but it's also very challenging because instead of just having to relay their content related to their subject matter expertise, they have to relate that content directly to the kinds of problems that the coaches face and are going to face in the workforce. So I think this is a very interesting and important trend, and one that we should be preparing for. Trend number 2, lifelong learning. Young people are more motivated to continue learning after leaving formal education. And the implication in this case to coach developers is the need to encourage and support learning outside of formal courses and programs. Pierre Trudel from University of Ottawa has been doing a lot of work in this regard with regard to coaching and with regard to learning in sport. And he defines these 3 different learning situations. Mediated learning situations, which is what we're all very familiar with. Courses, training programs, universities, formal workshops. Very much where there is a curriculum and an expert that is conveying knowledge. In a mediated situation, another person is directing the learning. But coaches also learn in unmediated situations where there's no instructor, the learner chooses what to learn. So those are interactions with other coaches, interactions with specialists, internet research, things that are generated and originated from the learner, from the coach, him or herself. And finally, internal learning situations, where as an individual you learn just from reflection, from stopping and thinking, from keeping a personal journal in order to really deepen the learning that you're undertaking. So again, as coach developers, we've got to have an opinion, a value in supporting learning in all 3 of these kinds of situations, not just rely on courses to help improve coaches, but to encourage all of these different learning situations. All right, trend number 3, student-centered learning. And this is an area that Dr. Ito has emphasized very strongly throughout the academy, thinking about athlete-centered coaching and the importance of that. But if we're going to move towards a more athlete-centered coaching environment, we should be teaching coaches in a student coach-centered learning environment. We should be modeling our teaching of coaches the same way we want the coaches to then prepare their athletes. So this indicates a move away from whole class teaching to pedagogies that place individual students' needs at the heart of learning. Again, the implications to coach developers: student-driven, personalized learning, modeling, athlete-centered coaching. I think this is a big challenge, both as a coach developer in teaching coaches, but also as a coach working with athletes to individualize the preparation of athletes to meet their individual needs instead of treating everybody the same. And I think there's some good guidelines in the work that Jennifer Moon has done around improving the impact of coaching. And that's really by relating the content to each learner's reality. And that's why I wanted to do that little exercise where you got to talk to a partner to think about these trends related to your own reality, because that's when learning starts to happen. When you don't just have content that doesn't relate to you, you really look at how it relates to your own situation. So what she recommends in terms of improving the impact of learning is, first of all, to develop an awareness of current practice. What is it that you are currently doing in whatever area it is that you're studying? Then clarify the new learning. As you convey new learning, clarify what you've learned on that course and how it can be used in your own coaching practice. But those, again, are very individualized efforts that you have to leave time for the students to be able to relate the content that you're teaching to that context and to that reality of the coaches. And then challenge them how to integrate that new learning into their day-to-day practice. So how does it relate to what you knew and did before? And then how would it work? How could you imagine any new content you've learned or new processes? How could you integrate that into improved practice? Trend number 4, collaborative learning. Less working alone and more time spent on group work. So this is very similar to one of the earlier points that was made, but it really is emphasizing the movement in education towards collaborative learning and the value that that has for each of the learners, to learn from one another, not just from an instructor, and that, again, that helps them relate it to their own context. To be effective at that requires facilitation skills, learning activity design, leadership skills, and really a very different skill set compared to traditional teaching. If you're going to really do collaborative learning and this kind of discussion and brainstorming and so on, that's a very different skill set from strictly having content knowledge that you can convey, but rather really facilitating that learning and the practical application of that learning for the coaches. Trend number 5, and now we move into some of the technology and cloud-based learning. So data, tools, software are all online and can be reached and modified from different resources. The implication here for coach developers is the need to enhance IT skills and be prepared for this direction. There's a number of benefits to cloud-based learning in terms of having access to data all of the time, that sharing, viewing, real-time collaborative editing, managing digital portfolios, mobile access to digital media. I mean, there's a whole variety of tools out there that are now available as part of a learning program or a learning process, and it's critical that we're familiar and comfortable with them. And linked to that is the concept of a personal learning environment. And personally, I found this one quite challenging because it isn't my strength in terms of having had experience in this, but certainly in this example, they're talking about the importance of this process as where learning is going. So this is really the online learning environment that you engage with is tailored to your personal needs, learning style, and personal interests. So these personal learning environments include how you collect information and store it, how you link to groups in order to reflect and share and connect with others, how you publish your materials, what kind of blogs or different publication elements that you use within your personal learning, not just on one particular course or aspect, but overall how you have coordinated and organized your learning. Again, the implication there is around IT expertise, but also facilitating student-centered and more individualized approaches to learning. So some of the experts in this have offered this opinion that I thought was very interesting, that that education is in a phase of disruption. Our understanding of learning has expanded at a rate that has far outpaced our conceptions of teaching. This has created not only promising changes, but also disruptive moments in teaching. So I think that is a very important point to think about. And they then talk about reasons why not just students would use or coaches would use a personal learning environment to organize their learning, but that educators really should also be developing a personal learning environment for these three reasons. We need to disrupt ourselves and really realize where we are going and where education is going in the future. Secondly, that the instructor's role has changed, that the learner is moving to the center of the learning and teaching model, and these tools really help move in that direction, so we had better be on board and cognizant of that. And third, access to the internet is changing how we teach and learn forever. Okay, the final trend that was identified by this group of teachers is a shifting focus of assessment. The focus of assessment is shifting from what you know to what you can do. And the implication of that is designing learning activities that apply content and then developing coach assessment skills amongst our coach developers. As an example, and I come from Canada and was previously the CEO of the Coaching Association of Canada, where we shifted our coaching program, the National Coaching Certification Program, to an assessment-based approach, where in assessment-based learning, learners can be assessed without taking a course. In a traditional training-based learning program, learners cannot be assessed until after they have taken whatever the course or learning is. So within the Canadian program, we have defined the standards for each outcome that is expected, and the coach can go directly to that assessment. It's a challenge to operate that way, but what it has caused the system to do is to really think about what it is that the coach has to be able to do. Instead of only thinking about teaching a course and teaching certain content, the focus of the coach developers is very much what do we want that coach to be able to do? What skills do we want them? What competencies do we want them to have? So I think it's been a very positive and fruitful change in improving the quality of coach education. So these are the 7 trends that were identified by the teachers, some of which may apply to you, some of them not. But I think it's important to ask ourselves whether we see these trends developing in our own programs, which are most important, but more importantly, what other trends do you see in your own context in order to really prepare for the future? So, are your coach developers ready for the future, and what are you doing to prepare? I think the characteristics that I've gone through in the last 20 minutes or so have been, first of all, a shift from traditional lecture to experiential learning. That, I think, is very fundamental to the direction that education and coach education is moving. Learning beyond the classroom, beyond the course, and looking at the overall learning of the coach. Individualized, learner-centered approaches to education. And are we able to use technology to enhance learning? So when technology can do this, so just imagine the kind of learning tools that the next generation will have available to them. It's a new world in terms of technology. Okay, just in closing, I'd like to talk a little bit about the support available to help in the transition from our current realities to a future that includes some of these kinds of things that I've been talking about by both the NSSU Coach Developer Academy and by the ICCE. So the Coach Developer Academy has been training coach developers really as leaders in coach education. And it's been a tremendously successful, tremendously important program in terms of really creating a foundation to improve coach education, not just here in Japan, but globally. And it really, as Massa referred to earlier, has focused or has been built upon the ICCE Coach Developer Program, but plus. There have been a lot of additional pieces to the Academy beyond the ICCE curriculum. So in addition to the facilitation skills, coach observation, mentoring, leadership, there's been a lot of work that's been done on athlete-centered coaching, action learning, parasport, the international symposia, and Japanese cultural experiences. So certainly this program has been a tremendous boon, a tremendous foundation to build from, and really has set us up for a great future in continuing this work in improving coach education through the development of a coach developer workforce. From the ICCE perspective, the Coach Developer Program that we are developing and in part have developed thanks to the support of the Coach Developer Academy here in Tokyo includes these 4 elements. Resources, the International Coach Developer Framework that Dr. Ito referred to, as well as e-modules, resource handbooks and guides. So a set of resources available to help organizations to do this work with coach developers. A set of courses around facilitation skills, field support skills, and coach developer leadership. Establishing standards, so developing guidelines in conjunction with international federations and with country-based coaching programs, as well as developing an ICCE standard for coach developers. And finally, consultation and assistance with organizations that are interested in developing their coach developer programs. So I think between the Academy and the ICCE, it's really been a wonderful partnership, a very mutually beneficial partnership, and we certainly are here to help organizations and countries to do further work in the development of their coach developer programs. So thank you very much. Arigato.